All right, today we're going to focus on something called significant figures, which is concept C in Unit 1. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to go through the basics of identifying a number of sig figs in a provided number to you. Significant figures is a big piece of this unit in terms of it carrying over into other concepts. So it's definitely something that we're going to practice a lot tomorrow in class, and then hopefully get to a place where you have a solid understanding of it before moving on. Significant figures of a number or measurement are those digits that carry meaning to its precision, so they're of importance. Those number of sig figs that we learned in the last lesson is a direct result of the divisions that measuring device contains. Now I'm going to show you two methods. The first one is based on 5 rules. The second one is based on something called the Atlantic Pacific method. I want you to see both of them so that you can make the determination of which method is going to work best for you. So let's start with method number 1, which is probably the most common in terms of the 5 rules. So rule number 1. Any non-zero numbers, 1 through 9, are always considered significant or important. So in example A, the 74.23, they're all 1 through 9 numbers, so they're all significant or all sig figs. So we have 4. Now, in rule number 2, zeros located between non-zero numbers are always considered significant. So the 0 between the 8 and 9 is significant, and the 0 between the 9 and 1 is significant. So all 5 of these are significant, so this number contains 5 sig figs. Alright, these next 3 rules are kind of the key to unlocking sig figs because they all pertain to zeros in terms of the beginning and ends of numbers, which are the toughest usually for students. But again, if you keep at it and practice it and grow your brain and those neurons, you'll get this. So example C, we have 187. And this one's, I think, students are most comfortable with. This 0, which is out at the beginning of a number, is not significant. It's just a placeholder. So the number of sig figs in this number is 3. An example D, which is I think the tougher number to look at here, when I say beginning of a number, I'm talking about not in front of the decimal place, but in front of the first 1 through 9 number. So that means that all 3 of these zeros are considered at the beginning and thus insignificant. So this number only contains 4 sig figs. Alright, number 4 and 5 are similar because we're talking about the zeros at the end of a number. Okay, zeros at the end of a number not containing a decimal point are not significant. So for example, E, there's no decimal point anywhere in the number, so these zeros at the end are insignificant. So we only have then 4 sig figs. In rule number 5, if there is a decimal point, those zeros at the end are always significant. So in example F, we have a decimal point, so this 0 is significant, so we have 5 total sig figs. In example G, we have a decimal point, so any ending zeros are significant. So in this example, we have 6 sig figs. So if you feel comfortable with this, you can go on to the practice, but just to summarize the rules, no decimal point, you're counting non-zero digits and zeros found between them. If there is a decimal point, you count the non-zero digits, the zeros between them, and any zeros at the end of a number, never any beginning zeros in either case. So pause the video, go through and see if you can determine the number of sig figs and the rules above that pertain to them. And then come back and check how you can see how you did. So in this first one, 234 centimeters, we have 3 sig figs because of rule number 1. They're all 1 through 9. The 2.30 grams, this has 3 sig figs because there's a decimal point, so the 0 at the end is significant, which goes along with rule number 5. This one can be a little bit tricky for students because of how the zeros are placed next to each other, but both zeros are between a 6 and a 9, so that makes them both significant. So this one actually has 6 sig figs because of rules 1 and 2. Alright, these next 3 examples. This top one has 4 sig figs. This 0 out in front is beginning 0, so it's insignificant. So this goes along with rules 1, 2, and 3. And then you just saw that the 29,000 only has 2 sig figs. There's no decimal point present, so these 3 zeros are insignificant. So 2 sig figs comes from rules 1 and 4. And then finally, this number, last number, only has 2 significant figures. You have the 2 zeros out in front of the first 1 through 9 number, so only the 4 and then the 0 at the end of the number containing a decimal point count. So this includes rules 1, 3, and 5. All right, so let's move on to this alternative method, which sometimes is considered a shortcut because we're not following specific rules that explain sig figs. It's just a method. So the Atlantic-Pacific method. You need to know where the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean are in terms of a map of the United States. If a decimal point is present, and when you think of present, you should be thinking the letter P, that means you start counting from the Pacific or the left-hand side of the number, starting with the first 1 through 9 digit. So in this example, I have a decimal point present, so I'm going to start on the Pacific or left-hand side. I'm going to go all the way over to the first 1 through 9 number. I'm going to count that number and anything to the right of it as significant. So I'm starting at the 3 and going away to the right so that I show 4 sig figs. On the other hand, if a decimal point is absent, and in the word absent, think of the letter A, you're going to start from the Atlantic or right-hand side, starting at the first 1 through 9 number. So I'm going to go over until I hit the first 1 through 9 number, and then count everything from that number on. So I'm going to count the 6 and everything to the left of it. So this shows me that I have 3 sig figs. So again, you could figure these out using the first method, but some students find the Atlantic-Pacific method a little bit easier and more straightforward. So try out these 3. I'm going to explain it using method number 2, but you can use either method that you feel more comfortable with at this point. So just go ahead and pause. For letter A, you should have gotten 3 significant figures. I have a decimal point present, so I start on the left or Pacific side. I count the 6 and over to get 3 sig figs. For letter B, I have no decimal point present, so I'm starting on the Atlantic or right-hand side, starting at the 1 and counting over, which gives me 3 sig figs as well. And then finally, I have a decimal point present. I'm going to start on the left or Pacific side, start at the 9 and count everything over, which means that I have 5 significant figures. Okay, so again, I said knowing these sig figs and how to count them is really going to be key in terms of the next couple of concepts. And remember, with these sig figs, it's all about those zeros. So I would go back over in method 1, rules 3 to 5, so that you can get a good grasp of it before coming to class tomorrow. So you are all set.